The operating room is chaos. Alarms are sounding all around me. People are rushing around, and I can hear urgent whispers. The one sound that I desperately need to hear and don't is the sound of my newborn daughter crying. Elizabeth was born at just 29 weeks, weighing 2 pounds. We would later learn that she had mitochondrial disease, or mito for short, which is a degenerative condition with no cure. The mito and a preemie birth injury left her blind, intellectually disabled, a wheelchair user, nonverbal, and very medically fragile. She needed 24-hour care, and she was my first, so I was terrified. That became my reality with Elizabeth. Always some new scary thing to overcome, some new heartache to face. But I gathered up my courage and decided that we were going to live our best life. I couldn't and wouldn't live every moment waiting for some catastrophe to happen. I wanted Elizabeth to have the same opportunities as every other child. So, when she was 7, I went down to the local library to sign her up for brownies. She was such an engaging child. I knew she would love the Girl Scouts. But then I found out that the meetings were being held at different family homes, and they wouldn't likely have a wheelchair ramp or otherwise be accessible to her. So I thought, well, I have a great idea. It seems reasonable. Why don't we meet at the library or at a school? The reaction that I got from the parents floored me. We are not changing the brownies just for you. I could not believe the lack of grace that they showed my daughter. She was so full of life. She had so much to give, if only they'd given her a chance. That day, I learned something fundamental about community. Community in Latin means the gift of togetherness, and it truly would have seemed like a gift to us at that time to be included in our community. But community isn't a gift. It's a basic human necessity. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancestors were collaborating to build fires, collect food, and for safety. And today, society is more isolated than ever. And this isolation is linked to things like high blood pressure and dementia and lots of other ailments. And our experience may be your experience too, because the CDC reports that 1 in 4 Americans has a disability or a special healthcare need that impacts their daily living. And Elizabeth and I lived this reality. Her care was so complex that without our nurses and doctors and medical team, she could have died, or I could have lost my mind. Our community was literally life-sustaining. And this taught me that community gives us purpose. Purpose isn't just philosophy. Various research shows that people who live their lives with purpose live longer, healthier, and more resilient lives. Now, fortunately for me, Elizabeth was my best teacher. She taught me that there's a crucial difference between passion and purpose. Passion expresses good intentions. And purpose inspires us to actually create change. Since discovering this difference, I've been living my life dedicated to creating change and living with purpose. And throughout my advocacy, I've met many people, maybe you have too, very happy to voice their beliefs. That discrimination is wrong, that people with disabilities deserve every opportunity. And these are admirable sentiments. But too often, that's passion without purpose. Passion says, this isn't right. Purpose says, this isn't right. Here's what I'm going to do about it. Passion feels good in the moment, right? But purpose is uncomfortable. It requires us to move beyond passion, beyond good intentions, into the messiness of actual change. Now think about that Brownies meeting. If you'd asked every parent, if I ask all of you, do they think that discrimination against children with disabilities is wrong? They would have all said yes, of course. Most people hold this belief, but belief without action, that's just a wish. Purpose-driven people don't just recognize injustice, they intervene. They ask, what if we planned this to be inclusive from the beginning? Purpose demands that we examine our spaces, our assumptions, and about who belongs. Later that same year, after the Brownies incident, I experienced another heartbreak. It's now Elizabeth's first communion, and she doesn't get to take part in the processional because it wraps all the way around the church and up the front steps. We had to enter through the back of the building and take a lift that we prayed would be working that day, because sometimes it wasn't. Then, after the event was over, they gathered the children together on the altar to take a picture. More stairs. Another heartbreak. I found myself shrinking to the side with Elizabeth, just expecting to experience another exclusion. But then, one mother spoke up. Hey, Elizabeth needs to be in the picture too. She could have just thought, how terrible that that little girl cannot participate. But she didn't. That's passion, but she chose purpose. She didn't wait for somebody else to speak up or for the perfect moment. She intervened. Her single voice transformed exclusion into inclusion. And that's the power of purpose. It bridges that gap between your good intentions and actual change. Elizabeth was in that photograph, beaming with the smile that lights up a room. And one voice made that moment possible. I treasure that memory. I treasure that picture. On November 18th, 2013, my heart broke forever when Elizabeth died. And here's the truth that sits with me every day. Elizabeth lived her entire 17 years in a world that saw her as an exception rather than an expectation. She experienced some moments of inclusion, yes, but they were always the result of someone going out of their way, making a special effort, someone speaking up, usually me. She never simply belonged. Elizabeth died without experiencing kind of inclusion that should be every person's birthright. She never walked into a space designed with her in mind. She never felt the ease of automatic belonging that so many of us take for granted. For 17 years, we fought for these moments of inclusion, photo here, an accommodation there. But Elizabeth died before seeing the world I had so desperately wanted to create for her. She never got to experience true community, the kind where her wheelchair wasn't an afterthought. That knowledge breaks my heart every single day, and I hope that it breaks yours. Now let's go back to that church for a moment. Close your eyes. Picture all the children on the stairs, and Elizabeth and I are off to the side. What would you have done? What if everyone in that room had noticed us and spoken up? Or what if no one needed to? Because that event had been designed for inclusion from the very beginning. Okay, open your eyes. This isn't wishful thinking. It's an achievable vision, but it requires us to move beyond individual acts of kindness, like that mom in the church, to a systematic approach to inclusion. Elizabeth never experienced that world. She died waiting for it. But maybe, just maybe, the next Elizabeth won't. Maybe the next Elizabeth being born at this very moment with her mom in that delivery room waiting to hear her cry won't have to spend their entire lives fighting for belonging, collecting moments of inclusion like rare treasures. The question isn't whether you believe in inclusion, because most of us do. The question is whether you'll move beyond passion to purpose, whether you'll be that voice that speaks up, like that mom in our church. Every voice matters. Your voice matters. You can create communities where everyone belongs from the beginning just by speaking up and using your voice. This I learned from Elizabeth, and I took my passion into my work and found my purpose. And I use my voice as an attorney and an advocate, creating the world that I wanted Elizabeth to live in. Elizabeth lived 17 years and never once walked into a room where she automatically belonged. Let that be the last time that ever happens. Thank you.